In this video, we're going to look at a database object known as views. So a view is a virtual table. It's an object saved in the database that has no data of itself, but runs like a select query. In fact, the basis of a view are select queries. A view has a name and can be referenced in SQL like you would reference any other table. What you're going to give that name depends on where you work at. Every place of employment might have a different naming convention for a view. Here's some examples. Here is an employee phone view, maybe VW as a prefix or V for a prefix. You will learn if you work with databases or programming, most places of work have their own naming conventions. The key idea here is that a view is virtual. It's like a select query, but it's stored as an object. The select query itself is not an object of the database. It's just text that you type in. Here's the basic syntax for creating a view. You're going to use the keyword create view and the name you're going to call it. Use the keyword as, and then this here could be almost any select statement that you want. Because the view is based on a select statement and behaves as a table, you can actually create another select statement that uses the view in the from clause as if it were a table. So if you have select statements, why bother creating views? First of all, as a DBA, it gives an extra layer of security, which is one of our concerns. You can limit access to data by filtering what fields or what columns are returned in the view. If you give someone access to an entire table, they can view all columns and all rows. But if you give someone access only to the view, they're restricted on what they can see. The DBA is going to assign permissions then to the view and not to the table. In addition, a view can hide the names of tables and fields and prevent SQL injections. So if you're taking security classes, you will know that creating views helps secure your database. Another thing that views can do is simplify. If you've been writing select statements that have had calculations in it, wouldn't it be easier if you could skip writing those calculations, especially when they get complex? And yes, when you create the view, you have to figure out the calculation. But then every time you need to re-execute it, the calculation's already there. So any SQL select statement saved as a virtual table, so you won't have to rewrite complex SQL. Now, so views present abstracted layers to users. Let me give you an example of an abstraction. I drive a car. Using the brake simplifies the concept of stopping the car to me because all I know is I need to press on the brake and it's going to slow the car up. I do not need to think, well, I'm applying the brake with a certain force, which is going to apply the brake pads to, I don't even know the term. So, but all that is abstracted to me. I simply apply the brakes. What is underneath the view is abstracted to the user. All they need to know is they've got the view returning what they need. So here's some examples of views you might consider. There's a manager for each department, and that manager should have access to the employee records in their department. If you give them access to the employee table, they have access to every record, including employees not in their department. If you create a view and give that manager access only to the view for their employees, that's all they see. Here's some examples of creating view. We're creating a view called V, New York Customer. And notice that it's got a where clause that's only selecting customers from New York. So if I have a sales rep that's over New York, they're only going to see those customers. Here's an example of creating a view to simplify a process. I don't know if you thought subqueries were complex or not. They are a little bit more complex than a regular view. So if I only want to see products above the average price, I no longer have to think through this query. I just say select star from VW products above an average price because this now behaves as a table. What columns will be returned? product name and unit price. And here is that SQL that's going to show all the fields that are in that view and only the rows that are above the average price. There are some limitations for views, and these are things we really haven't talked much about. You can't use select into. Haven't really talked about that. You can't use order by with a view unless you include top. And you can't base a select on temporary tables, which we really haven't talked about either. Besides creating view, you also have the option to alter an existing view. Here is the alter view. More or less, you're rewriting the whole select statement. And then you have the drop view if you no longer need a view.